The last 2 years in the UK housing market have basically been like that Avengers Infinity War scene with Thor and Thanos. You know when he comes down in that rainbow lightning and he throws the axe, hits him in the chest, and Thor thinks he's finally gotten rid of Thanos and he's killed him, even though he's got the gauntlet.
I told you. You die for that.
And that's what we thought and how we felt when we'd finally gotten rid of Boris Johnson back then. We thought we'd get in a new PM who would rescue the economy and the housing market, because Boris was on a madness and he'd fully wrecked the economy by that stage. He was on one. But we just replaced him with something worse. To quote Thanos,
"You should have gone for the head."
We needed to get the whole party out. We just replaced one useless tool with another one. Because what came next was even worse and absolutely devastated the economy and the housing market. Auntie Liz and Uncle Kwasi snapped away. Low mortgage rates, historically low mortgage rates to be fair, but those 2-3% are a thing of the past. They snapped away what was a growing UK housing market despite COVID, because if you remember at the time, everyone was predicting a crash, but the housing market was actually growing at an alarming rate during COVID. Gone. Stable rates and of course acceptable inflation, absolutely gone into the past, okay? What followed was pure chaos.
Did you do it?
Yes.
What did it cost?
Everything.
As we sit here now in the early part, the first part of 2024, even though what seems like, and I say this very tentatively, the worst of the chaos in the UK housing market is over, we're still in for a tough 2024. Here's why.
Right, falling house prices, good or bad? Depends if you want to buy a house, Liam.
I'm an economist on the one hand, on the other. That's why Napoleon said, give me a one-handed economist. It depends what end of the telescope you're looking through, doesn't it? Look, when house prices go down and earnings go up, there's an improvement in what's called the affordability ratio. The affordability ratio is the price of the average home compared to the average wage. And you can look at in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, across the economy as a whole, that number, according to the Nationwide, we can get this up on a graphic actually, that average UK home to earnings ratio is now 6.7 times, okay? And that's historically lower. It's down from, I guess the graphic isn't there, it's down from 7.3 times last year. But because we've had 14 interest rate rises since December 2001, even though the price earnings ratio has fallen, people's ability to actually buy the house, unless they're a cash buyer, has diminished. And
so what is he saying there? He's saying that even though prices of houses are falling, which they have started to, but only just, right? Even in a year, 2014, even in 2024 with falling house prices, what you've got is a huge rise in interest rates, which is basically negating that, right? So yeah, affordability has improved, but even then I would challenge that, and we'll look at an article on that in a second. Regardless of that, these mortgage rates at 5% and above are really pricing people out of the market still. Who is able to afford a 5% rate on their mortgage, as well as an inflationary cost of living crisis where all of your daily expenses, your bills, your utilities, your groceries, your transport is all sky high? The housing market in 2024 is still peak, guys.
Borrowing. And let's be completely clear, the house price to earnings ratio has fallen from 7.3 to 6.6. Ratio has fallen from 7.3 of borrowing. And let's be completely clear, the house price to earnings ratio has fallen from 7.3 to 6.7. Back in the late 90s, it was 3 or 4 times earnings. That meant that a single person, because you can get 3 times your income on a mortgage, could buy an average house. Now, if you're at 6.7, a couple, both of whom are working full time, they can only borrow 6 times, right? And that's before you take into account childcare. Presumably, a big reason for buying the average home is because you want to have the average family, which is 2.1 kids, right? So even an average couple can't afford an average home on this earnings multiple before you even consider the borrowing cost.
So, look,
Listen to what, I hope you deeped what he just said, yeah, when it comes to UK housing. A couple of generations ago, the average home was 3 or 4 times a person's salary, okay? Now we're looking at 7, 8 times. So to all of you boomers out there, you in your 50s, 60s, the debate is over. You had it easy when it came to buying property, okay? I don't want to hear none of this, you don't work hard, you millennials, you Gen Zs, you need to put in more effort, put in the hours. You had it easier. The math is mathing, okay? Numbers don't lie. You had it easy. For us, our generation and beyond, it's only going to get more and more difficult. I can't see houses returning to 3 or 4 times the average person's salary, unless salaries do that, which they're not. They haven't grown in real terms significantly for decades, or unless the average price of a property in the UK basically halves. That's not going to happen, is it? Again, it is peak in 2024 in the UK housing market, especially for millennials and Gen Zs. And let's have a look at what Bloomberg has to say about house prices in the UK. Always interesting to get a perspective from across the pond in another country, this time America. This is the most American intro
London's
ever.
rental costs are showing signs of easing, with demand dropping and evidence that people are refusing to pay record costs just to secure a home. Now, according to research from property surveyors, tenant demand across the UK recorded the slowest quarter-on-quarter increase in October since 2021. More broadly, the survey from RIC says house prices will remain under pressure. It's a lot to digest, but not for Bloomer economist Neeraj Shah, joining us now right here on set. Neeraj, a little bit of a mixed picture when it comes to what you're seeing in the housing market here. What is actually happening? What is your take?
Maybe the best way to look at it is there's less bad news across the board. With the rental side, there's less pressures coming forward. In London, there's a real pushback, actually, and that's really down to affordability. I think tenants have reached their limit, and going forward, some are moving out of London.
That is a really interesting point. So he's talking about the rental market as opposed to the buying market. I think he's going to come onto the buying side of things as well. But he's saying in terms of renters, in London, people are just, okay, we're at our ceiling. We can't afford any more increases in our rent. We are at our limit. There's a cost of living crisis going on. We really don't have any more money.
Some are actually enticed into buying property because they're paying so much rent. You have to remember, rents in London have increased by about 30% since the pandemic.
That's wild. 30% in what, 2 and a bit years increase in rent. That is wild, especially when you consider that the average rent in London is what? Round about £1,000, okay, probably just over that. So it's an extra £300 that you got to find for your rent in the space of a few years. Terrible.
Extraordinary. On the other side, house prices themselves, they are still, the survey shows they're still going to be negative, but less negative ahead. But remember, minus 63, that's still a significantly low level. That sort of emulates level in 2000.
I'm not sure he rehearsed his speaking piece on today's show before coming on live.
2009, so it's still quite significant. So
that's quite the comparison.
Yeah.
So less bad news, you say, but does that mean the worst is behind us? Is this a recovery in the making?
It might be the best way to look at it is that we've passed the peak crunch, but a slow puncture is still yet to continue. And essentially, the bottom line is mortgage rates are still elevated, and that's going to put pressure on house prices ahead.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Mortgage rates are still elevated. We're still at 5-6% for your monthly mortgage, and you know, just a few years ago, you was at what, 2%, 2 and a bit. I know this seems pessimistic, but you know, we just got to say it like it is. We got to be. I'm a realist, but you know, it is hard out here if you own a house, if you own a home, if you're remortgaging at these new higher rates, or if you want to get onto the ladder for the first time. And let's have a look at what The Guardian has to say about house prices and the market in 2024. What will happen to the house prices and mortgage rates in 2024? This was written in December, so we're a couple of weeks ahead. Mortgage deals below 4% in 2024. That's a bit racy, isn't it? So let's see what they're saying. So as things currently stand, home buyers with small deposits will find that average rates are now down considerably from a few months ago, according to data provider. The average 2-year fixed rate 95% LTV mortgage rate, so for someone that can only raise a 5% deposit, so that's 6.21% on the 21st of December, down from 7.1%. That's still expensive, 6.21%. Oh my gosh. That's not good. I mean, it is good news, but that is hard. I mean, there's still going to be a ton of people that are going to avoid buying property because rates are at 6.21%. People can't afford that. Rates are already much better than they were in the summer. And there is still competition driving that. I think this will encourage more activity as the year. Are these people on another planet? Wow. Let's see what else it says. So deposits on a decent number of 95% loans. That's good because, you know, with rates as they are, and just general affordability, you know, affordability, the last 2-3 years aside, just the average price of a property is still very expensive in the UK, especially in London. So 5% deposits are really all that a lot of people can afford, regardless of, you know, what's happened in the last few years. We see here that product choice is improved, including borrowers who do not have a large deposit to put down, 251 mortgage deals to choose from that are based around the 5% deposit compared to 144 at the start of December last year. Yeah, that's a good thing. You know, people are struggling to afford the average price of a property in the UK. Okay, just the average person on the average wage is paying 7 to 8 times their salary for the average property in the UK. We just saw that in the video. So what does that mean? It is really hard to pass the affordability criteria for a mortgage and to just stump up the deposit. So the lower the deposit, the better for a lot of people. And further on, the article ends where it says, first-time buyers are facing the problem of high house prices compounded by high interest rates in years, which means the need for a large deposit. Yeah, exactly the point I just made, right? So especially if you're a first-time buyer and you're genuinely starting from scratch, house prices are high in the UK, across the UK, not just, you know, pockets, across the UK. And added to that, you have high interest rates. So you need a large deposit. So if you can get away with 5%, that's good. But yeah, it is hard. So yeah, guys, this video is about keeping it real when it comes to UK housing. It is hard. What are some of the ways? I know I've just presented or analysed a lot of the issues that come with affording a house in the UK right now. Prices have been outside of the range of affordability for the average person for decades, not just the last few years. It's more the interest rates that have come alongside that to make it even harder. How can you contend, manage, overcome that? There are a few ways, guys. One is moving to a more affordable part of the UK, different town, different city, where prices are a lot more affordable. So I live in London, but a lot of my friends have gone out to Essex, to Kent, to Surrey, okay, to Hampshire, where you can get more for your money and it's more affordable. You can do it by doubling up, so joining up if you have a partner or a friend that you can live with. Yeah, spreading that cost between two people is a solution as well, guys. Also the government scheme. So you saw this 5% scheme. So you saw these 5% products, the Help to Buy scheme, shared ownership scheme, these government schemes. Use them to your advantage while they're still available. But those are some ways, guys. Thank you for watching. This year, I'm making a video every month to answer any questions that you have for me. So whether you want to know whether you should invest in a limited company or in your own name, whether you should buy a flat or a house, what is the best way to get started in property, or who my barber is, just let me know. You can ask me in the comment section below, on Instagram, on TikTok, and I'll make a video dedicated to your questions. Like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.